Black Hawk, Fearless Champion of Freedom is a 15-chapter film serial from Columbia Pictures that made its debut in 1952. The film stars Kirk Alyn as Black Hawk and Carol Foreman as the Red Spy Laska, whose organization wants to steal the fictional superfuel Element X.
Then that would mean the end to the need for oil in time of war.
That's right.
It might happen. Yeah, and monkeys might fly out of my butt.
You may remember both of these actors from the first Superman serial from 1948. Similar to the casting for this picture, Alyn was the hero, Superman, and Foreman was the bad girl, Spider Lady. After getting used to Alyn as Superman, it's kinda weird to see Black Hawk getting knocked on his ass by red spies every once in a while. Black Hawk first appeared in Military Comics #1 in August 1941, published by Quality Comics. Created by Chuck Cadera, Bob Powell, and Will Eisner, Black Hawk eventually received his own self-titled comic book in 1944. Quality Comics may have folded by the end of 1956, but the characters and properties of the company, including Black Hawk, had been incorporated into DC Comics, who continued to publish their adventures. Much like Captain Marvel and Fawcett Comics, they were released on a royalty basis, and eventually DC bought the full rights to the characters. The Catsman cheapness factor is readily apparent, as there's really no Black Hawk Island or Grumman Skyrockets that are normally associated with the Blackhawks. Despite this, most of the Blackhawks make an appearance. Stanislaus, Andre, Chuck, Olaf, Hendrickson, and Chop Chop are all on hand to help Black Hawk keep the electronic combustion ray and Element X out of the leader's hands. The leader is the mystery villain this time around, and I have to say I can't help but think of Blowfield or Dr. Claw whenever Laska would call him up on the radio. Whereas the comics thrived in a World War II setting, having the Blackhawks get into dogfights with Nazi aviators, this serial came too late to deal with any of the Nazi stuff, much less any exciting aerial dogfights. Stanislaus, Andre, Olaf, and Hendrickson would first appear in Military Comics 2, while Chuck came later in Military Comics 11. The serial would not focus on these characters' accents as in the comics and the radio program. In the comics, Black Hawk was originally from Poland and later explained as Polish-American. His men all had accents and archetypes typical of their place of origin. Stanislaus was also Polish, Andre French, Olaf Norwegian, Hendrickson Dutch, and Chuck a Texan from the good old US of A. When first watching the serial, it took me a few minutes to figure out who was supposed to be who. Of course, Black Hawk is singled out by the emblem on his chest, but identifying the others reminds me of reading black and white Judge Dredd books where I'd get a random red shirt judge confused with Dredd, or telling apart the Ninja Turtles with all red masks or in civilian clothes. Anyway, Andre is a little guy with a young face, Chuck is the tall, brown-haired, clean-shaven guy, Stanislaus is the black-haired guy whose brother Boris tries to take his place. Boris was actually a character in the comics as well, though he was a Russian Black Hawk in Military Comics 2, who was never seen after that. Olaf is the blonde with the mustache, and Hendrickson is the mechanic. And then we've got Chop Chop. Chop Chop would first show up in Military Comics 3. All I'm going to say on the topic of Chop Chop is that he makes the Trade Federation guys look politically correct.
This isn't how it's supposed to be.
The Blackhawks would go on to appear in the series Justice League and the animated feature The New Frontier. Black Hawk himself would be voiced by Robert Picardo.
Savage has mounted an airborne invasion. He's headed for America.
And if Filmation had had their way, the Blackhawks would have been a regular part of the stable of the Superman-Aquaman Hour. Black Hawk Island and Chuck would also be featured in Justice League Unlimited. My main criticism of this serial is actually very similar to the problems I had with Hop Harrigan. There's really not a lot of aviation in a film about daring aviators.
Here comes a car.
It's the Blackhawks.
I mean, shouldn't it be more like here comes that FX-57 skyrocket swooping down on us? It's kinda sad when you get excited just because a plane shows up instead of a car.
Well, we'd walked before.
And then there's the intro that starts every episode of the serial.
The Blackhawks, with no weapons but their strong fists and alert minds.
And while they certainly have their share of fist fights, I would eventually see the one pistol that Catsman could afford on set appear in a scene.
Never thought I'd see you again. What happened to those men?
So what exactly happened to fighting only with their strong fists and minds? I'd let it slide, but I mean, they intro with
The Blackhawks, with no weapons but their strong fists and alert minds.
Every episode, so it was kind of hard to get it out of my mind. I mean, their planes have no weaponry, but since he can't punch an animated robot by sticking his fist out the window, which was really a reused flying saucer from the Superman serial,
Slime didn't even change the names, man.
he sticks his pistol outside the window, and then he hits it on the first shot, and then Blackhawk gets shot, just like Hop Harrigan, and, you know, it's okay without any explanation. I mean, he's not wearing a vest. What's going on? I mean, Vigilante might not be that much better a serial than the Blackhawks, but at least they didn't sell me a false bill of goods. I mean, I got a singing cowboy on a motorcycle with a pistol. I don't want fist fights, I want some dog fights, you know?
Nice going, Blackhawk.